Former Governor Abdullahi Adamu of Nasarawa State has described as wishful thinking the calls for the zoning of the presidency ahead of the 2023 election. Mr. Adamu, the senator representing Nasarawa West Senatorial District, said this while addressing journalists in Abuja. It explained that the constitutional provisions cannot be wished away. Mr. Adamu, also the chairman of the Senate Committee on Agricultural Development, kicked against anti-open grazing measures taken by southern governors. The representative of the Federal Government Universal Basic Education Board, Dr. Tom Okiri, had described the state of Osun as a reference point in terms of quality of learning facilities, academic performance, and welfare of teachers in public schools in the state. Dr. Okiri gave the assessment during the inspection of some public schools, including primary and grammar schools in Osogbo, Ilesha, Ile-Ife, Modakeke, Gbongan, Owogi, as well as Owodede. Teachers of the schools visited in company with the chairman of Osun State University Education Board, Honorable Jibola Famoriwa, members of the board, as well as the executive secretary, Alhaj Adeoye Bakare, provided relevant information bordering on the quality of the learning facilities, quality of education, number of PPs and students, competence of the teachers, as well as teachers' welfare and academic performance. An Accra Circuit Court has issued a bench warrant for the arrest of a businessman for allegedly defrauding some foreign investors in a more than $1 million gold scam. The bench warrant was issued after he failed to appear before the court to which he had been summoned. The court, presided over by Mr. Emmanuel Sandor, issued the bench warrant following an application by the prosecuting officer, Inspector Eric Pobe, who noted that the defendant was absent from defending the charge against him. Presenting the facts of the case before the court, Mr. Pobe said two investors from the United Kingdom and their business partners were introduced to Alhaji Yahya in the year 2020 as a businessman who traded in gold. The investors indicated that interest in buying gold bars from Yahya and subsequently traveled to Ghana. On Yahya's request, who also demanded they meet him in person for negotiation in respect of the transaction. In February last year, Yahya and an accomplice, Samuel Asante, now at large, met the investors and showed them 20 kilograms of gold bars. The foreign investors expressed their readiness to buy 5 kilograms of the gold, for which Yahya and his accomplice demanded and collected $69,000 as initial payment of the value of the gold. After receipt of the money, they promised to export the gold to the foreign investors, who would take delivery of it in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, but they ended up exporting only 1 kilogram of gold to the investors. Sri Lanka has reappointed a veteran central banker as governor of the apex financial body to bolster depleted foreign exchange reserves and service debt without seeking an international bailout. A former junior minister overseeing capital markets who led the Central Bank of Sri Lanka from 2006 until early 2015, Mr. Ajit Nivard, has again been returned as the governor. Mr. Cabral, who resigned from Parliament yesterday, confirmed his appointment in a phone interview, noting that he will be concentrating on stability first, later growth. Reports say the yield on Sri Lanka's 2024 dollar bonds, which were up 43 basis points in the previous two seasons, fell about 4 basis points to 25.3. During his previous governor term, Mr. Cabral steered inflation to low single digits and held down interest rates, while foreign exchange reserves grew thanks to a resurgence in tourism and economic growth with the end of the island's civil war. This is the weather at noon, coming to you from Osun State Broadcasting Corporation, Ilea Wiji, Okebale Osogbo, Voice of the West. No one in this world is pure and perfect. If you avoid people for their little mistakes, you will always be alone. So, judge less and love more. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the foreign forces being deployed in Syria without a decision by the United Nations is a hindrance to its consolidation. According to reports, the comments came during a meeting of the president of the Middle Eastern nation, Bashar al-Assad, and the Russian capital after Mr. Putin congratulated President Assad on his win in Syria's presidential election. President Putin added that the terrorists had sustained a very serious damage and Syria government controls 90% of the terrorists. Information has it that Russian support has helped Assad win against the rebels who tried to overthrow him during the civil war that began in the year 2011. Mr. Assad, who lost the meeting in Moscow with Putin, was in 2015, thanked the Russian leader for humanitarian aid to Syria and for his efforts to halt the spread of terrorism. The United States and the European Union have agreed to try and cut emissions of the planet-warming gas methane by about one-third by the end of this decade. According to reports, they are pushing other chief economies to join them. Their pact came as Washington and Brussels seek to galvanize other key economies ahead of a World Summit to address climate change in Glasgow, Scotland next month. Reports added that this could have a significant effect on energy, agriculture, and waste industries responsible for the bulk of methane emissions. The greenhouse gas methane, the biggest cause of climate change after carbon dioxide, is facing more scrutiny as governments search for solutions to limit global warming. President Joe Biden has used his first Western swing in office to hold out wildfires burning across the region as an agreement for his $3.5 trillion rebuilding plans. The American president has also called for year-round fires and other extreme weather climate change, the reality that the nation can no longer ignore. President Biden sought to boost support for his big rebuilding plans with troops in Idaho and California, saying every dollar spent on resilience will save $6 in future costs. He said the rebuilding must go beyond simply restoring damaged systems and instead ensure communities can withstand such crises. Analysts say the president's two-day Western swing came at a critical juncture for a central plank of his legislative agenda. Meanwhile, a key Democratic senator said lawmakers are working to assemble details of the infrastructure plus plan and how to pay for it. Norway's left-wing opposition, headed by Labour Party leader Mr. Gerard Gahr, has had a landslide win in a general election after a campaign dominated by the future of the country's oil industry. According to reports, Mr. Storr unseated a center-right coalition headed by Conservative Prime Minister Mr. Erna Solberg, who had been in power since 2013. Mr. Storr, who is likely to be the next Prime Minister, told Chinese supporters after Mr. Solberg conceded defeat that he had worked so hard and had finally made it. The Directorate of Elections had earlier projected that 97.4% of the votes counted, Labour and 4 other centre-left parties could swing to a combined majority of 100 seats, up from 81 currently. A minimum of 85 seats is required to win a majority in the 169-seat parliament. Israel has launched a massive manhunt in the country's north and the occupied West Bank after 6 Palestinian prisoners tunneled out of their cell and escaped from a high-security facility and the biggest prison break of its kind in decades. The escape marks an embarrassing security breach just ahead of the Jewish New Year, when Israelis flock to the north to enjoy beaches, campsites, and the Sea of Galilee. The prisoners appeared to have gone into hiding, and there was no indication that Israeli authorities viewed them as an immediate threat. Reports say Palestinians consider prisoners held by Israel to be heroes of their national cause, and many celebrated the escape on social media. Efforts to capture the escapees will likely draw attention to the Palestinian Authority's security coordination with Israel, which is deeply unpopular among Palestinians. Meanwhile, there was no immediate comment from DP about President Mahmoud Abbas' Fatah party has praised the escape. And here again are the highlights of the weather at noon. Our former governor in Nigeria, Abdullahi Adamu of Nasarawa State, has described as wishful thinking the cause for the zoning of the presidency ahead of the 2023 election. An Accra Circuit Court has issued a bench warrant for the arrest of a businessman, Alhaji Siba Yahya, for allegedly defrauding some foreign investors in a more than $1 million good scam. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the foreign forces being deployed in Syria without a decision by the United Nations is a hindrance to its consolidation. 6 Palestinian prisoners have tunneled out of their cell and escaped from high-security Israeli jail. The authorities view them as an immediate threat and have launched a massive manhunt. That was the news. That was the weather at noon, edited by Olusayo Babatunde and delivered by Oluwatoyin Yusuf. The lingering challenges bedeviling the Nigeria's economy, which have resulted in a poverty-wrecked society where food and major needs of society are no more affordable, no doubt call for concern.